Well, Rachel, it's American Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. I didn't wear my turkey hat.
No, you didn't. So we're gonna have to restart this, I guess. Start all over because you didn't wear your turkey hat. No, but all of our American listeners, all of our American Thanksgiving listeners, happy Thanksgiving.
And also, if you are listening on Thanksgiving, go spend time with your family, please.
Yeah, what are you doing with us? But hey, we'd like to bring you in and spend the holiday with you, I guess. Shall we say? We can be at part of your table. As my favorite story every Thanksgiving, I'm sure you've seen this, is the woman who texted the wrong number.
Oh my God, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then like this I just saw a picture on my way here. It was 8 straight years going where the woman texts the wrong number, and it ends up being this young kid
who doesn't have a family,
who like doesn't have anywhere to go on Thanksgiving, and she's like, well, why don't you come on over? She's like, okay, well, I know it's a wrong number, but like, hey, come on over.
Which is a very kind thing to do.
Yes, like, because Thanksgiving, like, you're opening up your home. There's a lot that goes into Thanksgiving. There's a lot of food. Like, there's a lot of stress.
And let's face it, young men eat a lot. They do.
They do. They sure do.
I have a younger brother, and he eats everything under the sun.
Just constantly. That's all he does.
Consistently eating, and he's also like 140 pounds. I don't know how.
And what's crazy too is like, yes, they're still going, and the husband actually like passed during COVID.
Oh,
like,
right.
Passed with COVID, but they're still going on, still, like holding. I think they did it over Zoom the year where no one could see each other. So it's just a lovely story, and I thought we'd open that up. Another great story, Rachel, is, I would say, sort of the rise of defensemen that we've had in the NHL. We've had quite the rise of young defensemen, specifically two.
Well, one was sort of already there. Because
one had already established himself as like, I am, he had a Norris and a Conn Smythe and a Cup and a Calder.
Yeah, when you have a Conn Smythe and a Cup and a Calder and a Norris, you have established yourself as the guy, because it is rare that a defenseman wins the Conn Smythe.
And he won 3 of those in the same year, by the way.
He's so good.
And we're talking about Cale
Makar.
In case anyone didn't know, we were talking about Cale Makar. Cale Makar, he had already established himself. Any defenseman who already has an 86-point season as well, I think you kind of have already established yourself.
Is pretty good, yeah.
Pretty good. But Quinn Hughes had always been a very, very good defenseman as well, I'd say. Like, he'd always been in the elite category.
I would like you to say on the record, how long ago did I tell you that I thought Quinn Hughes was going to be special and not enough people were paying attention?
Like, as long as I've known you, I think. Like, as long as Quinn Hughes has been in the NHL and I have known you.
I feel... Yeah, and we talked about that. It was pre-Vancouver where I was like, this kid's so good.
This was you and I recording in like my old condo when we were talking about that, like during COVID.
And then while I was employed in Vancouver, I would like send you highlights, and just the caption was just LOL.
Yeah, it would be crazy. It's all you would. I remember
it was annoying.
No, I know. I remember we were like, it was one of those moments where we finally, like, because there was, a little bit of time where where you were across the country. I never saw you. But then the Canucks were facing the Leafs. And so we finally got to like hang out in a morning skate. And I remember even during that conversation, you were mentioning about how good Quinn was. And this is the coming out party, at least offensively, for Quinn Hughes this year.
Yeah. Like, I mean, defensively, there's still like, he's making huge improvements, and it helps that the Canucks finally got him a partner that isn't a friggin' boat anchor.
Oh yeah.
Like, that always helps, because when Cale Makar got Devin Taves, and
changed everything.
It changed, like it elevated him. And you can see that now having a consistent pair with Hronek and Hughes has really allowed Quinn to elevate his game. And that's something where I think we really have been robbed of, because with respect, and you know how much I like Luke, with respect to Luke Shen and Tyler Myers and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, no. So I think what we're seeing here is when you get an adequate partner for a star, they become a superstar. But before we get into like comparing them, I want to have a conversation about the word elite.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So I did a master's. And academically speaking, the word elite is to be used for the top 5 percentile. So if you play in the NHL compared to all other hockey players on the planet, you are elite.
Yes, like absolutely. It's all about context, right?
But compared to other NHLers, you are not. You have to be in the top 5 percentile to be considered elite. And by academic standards, yes, you can be elite for a certain period of time, but to be considered elite, it has to be done over a certain sample size.
Yeah.
Cale Makar has established himself as elite over a sample size, as has Erik Karlsson. Adam Fox has not.
Not yet.
Not yet. Because he hasn't finished in the top 5 percentile for enough seasons to be considered elite. He is a top-end defenseman.
Yes.
Quinn Hughes has not had a single elite season offensively and defensively. You can argue, and we're going to get into it, he's not having an elite defensive season. But offensively, hilariously elite this year.
He's leading the league in points.
Like, it's ridiculous.
He's a defenseman. He's leading the league in points.
It's also been 20 games.
Yes, but it's important to know that, like, look, that's a quarter of the season.
That's a quarter, but that sample size is not big enough.
Yes.
And the word elite gets used far too often in hockey.
It's like generational. Everyone says generational is a word that I see and hear being used all the time. And the thing is, generation means once in a generation.
Right. Austin Matthews, not a generational player. That belongs to McDavid.
Yes. Well,
in the same way that
we don't know now. He's slumping pretty hard.
No, he's earned that. But Michael Farber had a piece, and I encourage everyone to go and find it. Basically, it's once every 7 or 8 years, which in hockey is considered a generation because that is more, it's 1.5 times the average NHL career. 8 years. The average NHL career, I believe, is 5 years. Like, it's about 250 games.
It also, like, it gives the next sort of like
age group.
Kids. Yeah, like age group
so
of kids.
If you look at it,
develop.
Bedard is, I believe, 8 years behind McDavid, who was 8 years behind Sid. And then you got into basically the only period of time where we had 2 generational talents, Gretzky and Lemieux.
Yeah.
That's the exception, right? Then you had, before that, and then you had Bobby Orr, like all the way back. And I don't care what anyone says, no one has touched Bobby Orr. He completely revolutionized the game and how it is played. Quinn Hughes, Erik Karlsson, Cale Makar.
They don't exist.
They straight up don't exist. And
because the sport of defense, or like the position of defense
literally changed.
Like what? Like they wouldn't be able to. They would all be forwards.
So elite is a word, and Jeremy on Twitter specifically, like he's like, "Oh, you're using an academic standard." No, I'm using the definition of the word. It's just it's overused, just like you pointed out with generational. It's just overused. Austin Matthews might be like. Alex Ovechkin is a generational scorer.
Yeah, like
he's
Austin
the greatest
Matthews,
goal scorer of all time. Austin Matthews is going to follow in those. He's the generational scorer of this generation.
He's got a generational
shot.
Not
the generational player.
No.
That belongs to McDavid. Now, Bedard might be both, but like...
He's on pace for 50 goals.
In his rookie year.
As an 18-year-old.
It's hilarious. So I want to be very clear when I say these are very good hockey players, but we throw the word elite around like it's candy on Halloween. And I think that needs to stop because it diminishes the word. Top end, very good. Top line, top pair. Like, we can use that. Elite is a different level. Is sort of what I'm getting at here by academic standards. And I've had this conversation with quite a few. There's actually an assistant general manager I had this conversation with, and he agreed. It's like that word is overused in our sport. How often do you hear the word elite in basketball?
I hear it a lot.
Right?
Not as much as hockey, though.
But when you say elite 3-point shooter, who's the first player
Steph
that
Curry.
comes? Right. How many
if
people?
If I was Max Kellerman, it would be Andre Iguodala.
But like, how many people are in Steph Curry's category of elite 3-point shooting?
No one touches it.
Literally zero.
And you know what? It's funny. You talk about the way that players have influenced like the game, like with Bobby Orr. Like Steph Curry, like he has created an entirely new genre of player of basketball.
Right. And he's not the player of the generation because that belongs to
LeBron James.
LeBron James.
Who, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time.
Agreed.
I'm glad we could. I'm
glad we agree.
We've never had that conversation before, but I'm glad we
agree
did.
on that.
Yeah.
So now that we've had the discussion about elite, we can get into the fact that these two defensemen are having, by definition, elite seasons.
Yes.
That does not make them elite.
So that's a micro. Like we talk about elite as like a macro. Like you have to have 5 seasons in the top 5 percentile or 3. Sorry,
it's 3
seasons in the top 5 percentile. We're boiling that down into we're talking about micro elite stuff.
Right. We're talking about this season, this context. They are having elite seasons. Both are in the top 5 percentile, not only for defensemen, but in the league.
Yes.
For play this year, which also, by the way, we really need to have a discussion at some point about the season that Sasha Barkov and Mikko Rantanen are having, because they need to be in the Hart conversation. Like Sasha Barkov, LOL. Hilarious. But let's talk. We said we're going to compare them offensively. We're going to talk about each of them offensively, defensively. We're going to compare them. Then we're going to talk about who else in the league deserves to be in that conversation based on overall play. Yeah. Offensively speaking, no one's touching them.
No, well, Quinn Hughes is leading the league in points. Like I know that it's only 20 games, but like, come on.
And you want to know what the funniest part about this entire thing is?
What is it, Rachel?
He, by every metric, like in terms of measurement value to team, is not even the best player on his team right now. That's Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
Elias Pettersson is second in player value this year.
Who's first?
Sasha Barkov.
No McDavid.
No
Draisaitl. Interesting.
So let's talk offense.
Let's do offensively
because like that's really why we're having this conversation, and this is probably we talk about Bobby Orr. Can we have a Bobby Orr trophy, please, for best offensive defenseman in the league? We have the best defensive forward. Why do we not have the best offensive defenseman?
We need the Bobby Orr offensive defenseman award, and then we need the Wayne Gretzky playmaker award. We need those
most assists.
Yes, we need those. Because
this is not hard.
It just makes sense.
It literally is not hard. You're talking about arguably the two best players to put on skates.
And we
don't have trophies.
You also want to modernize the game a little bit. They updated it to Ted Lindsay, who was somewhat of a modern addition.
He also created the Players Association. So change the game.
Yes. But it's also the King Clancy Award. The Clarence Campbell Award.
First of all, Clarence Campbell was an executive. What are we doing here?
Art
Ross,
the Lady Bing.
I mean, at least we changed the Lester B. Pearson Award. Why didn't we have something named after a prime minister?
Yeah, that was.
That's for an airport.
Can you imagine if that now we have the Grover Cleveland Award presented to LeBron James.
We have the William Lyon Mackenzie King Award.
Or just we have the Calvin Coolidge Award for outstanding rebounding this season. It makes no sense.
Honestly, insane. I understand James Norris, NHL hockey player. Fine. But we have the Rocket. That makes sense.
Yeah, he revolutionized goal scoring.
First guy to score 500. We can leave that.
And in a time when players were playing with 2x4s in their hands, and they were literally they would clock out at the steel mill that night and then head to the rink and basically play with a tree branch and smack.
And I love some of the arguments on my Twitter were oh well, if you dropped Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar into the 1960s, they would be elite. Yeah, but that means they also have to not be allowed to train because they have to go to war.
Yeah,
they have to go to work. And they have to play with a 2x4, and they have to play with skates that are held together with elastic bands.
In the 60s, they would be going to Vietnam, I guess. So yeah. But at the same time,
you know what? If you want to send them to Vietnam and then they can come back, and we'll see how they do.
Why has no screenwriter written this might be my $1 million idea here?
Oh, no.
And God, do I need it? Why has no screenwriter made a movie about I don't know, you're not going to use a real athlete, but you make up an athlete who's at the same level of LeBron James or something.
Yeah.
And they through some crazy time travel snafu, they fall into a wormhole and they They drop into the 1960s.
Okay, you need to shut up because I'm gonna propose this idea
Yeah.
to an actual movie producer that I know.
Like and
I'm gonna
and just
this
see
is
what
gonna be a
that's
thing.
like. Can you imagine? That would be great. Like you just like one day he's coming over from the game and he finds a wormhole. He's like, whoa,
Zip it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk offense.
So
Give me some numbers.
Cale Makar, 29 points in 18 games.
So he's gonna surpass the whole Al McInnes, Bobby Orr thing too. We're gonna get 2 defensemen in a season.
Absolutely, and a league leading 24 assists.
Is that good?
That's phenomenal. 24 assists in 18 games. He also in his last 5 games, he has 13 points. That includes 3 straight games where he 3 straight performances of 3 assists.
Do you know how much money he's made me in the last week?
Like probably a crazy amount. Also,
I can buy a new pair of. Actually, I can buy a purse with the amount of money that he and Quinn Hughes have made me in the last week.
Man, you got
#payroll.
Like I said, we gotta pull a Shane Pinto, and you just open up a gambling account in my name, and then get suspended 41
like
games.
Averaging 2.5 points a game
is
for a
crazy.
forward is nuts.
nuts.
Like when McDavid was doing that last year, we were like, "LOL, this guy's ridiculous."
William Nylander's doing that right now, and we're all wondering how much money he's going to get paid. Like,
yeah, and we have defensemen doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy. So 14 points at 5-on-5.
Okay, so half his points are 5-on-5.
Literally half his points are 5-on-5.
Okay,
pretty good. Now we talk about Quinn Hughes.
Okay,
Quinn Hughes, as like we said, a league leading 31 points in 20
That's
games.
good.
He also has already tied his career high for goals with 8.
Yeah, so he did a ton of work on his shot this year,
and it shows.
He's shooting the puck a ton more. Like he's in
the 95th percentile.
Yeah, like he's shooting the puck more than Yossi, which is wild because Yossi, I think, averaged like 3.2 shots a game last year. Now, once again, it helps that he has a defense partner that is capable of generally playing hockey. So Quinn does all this work on his shot, and it's showing.
Oh, yeah.
Accuracy, release point. Like I got really bored one day and was like, you know what? I'm going to do a full evaluation of the differences between Quinn's shot because I still have all that video from when I was in Vancouver. And I have video on my television and access on my computer. So I did like an evaluation.
You're telling me your TV can play video?
Yeah.
What?
It's
Where can I get me one of those?
So Quinn's release point is different. I noticed.
Okay.
Like I remember I was actually a part of when Austin Matthews remade his shot that one summer. Quinn seems to have done something similar, obviously not to the same extent, but the way he releases the puck has changed.
Wow.
The way his the angle between his stick and his plant foot is different. Where his hands are on his stick and relative to his body is different. And what I've noticed is it allows him to generate more deception and power in his shot, which is absolutely contributing to his goal scoring this season. And so kudos to him because I think it goes under the radar when a player kind of has this bump. People are like, oh, like shooting percentage. And don't get me wrong. He's not going to sustain a 13% shooting percentage. No defenseman is. But when you remake your shot, like you deserve a ton of credit. That is really difficult to do because you are altering the muscle memory and the mechanics. And for that to happen over a period of one off season is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely.
So he is probably going to score 20 goals this year and it's going to be amazing.
Which will more than double his previous, like because Quinn Hughes in all the years past, he would put up ludicrous assist numbers and he'd finish with like 4, 5, 6, 7.
He had like 73 assists last year or something like that.
He had, well, let me check.
I want to say it was like, it might have been.
He had 69.
I was going to say it might have been nice. It was, it was incredible. And for him to take that step, you can see what like a healthy, really good defense partner can do. What's his power play numbers?
His power play numbers are pretty nuts.
Which, by the way, that power play ain't going to sustain itself. We're already seeing it sort of start to come down. It's still going to be one of the top power plays in the league just because of the movement and everything they've got going on. It is not going to sustain a 50% clip.
Yeah, so his PPO.
His power play offense?
Is 3.1. Or sorry, 2.1. My bad.
2.1. That's high.
That's very high.
That's really high.
Whereas EVO, even strength offense, it's 5.3.
That's also high.
So He's doing great. The thing is, though, is that Cale Makar, he seems to have beaten him. Not beaten him. I don't want to put these two beautiful queens against each other, you know, like that meme. But Cale Makar does seem to be able to do his dirty work at 5-on-5.
Yeah. So the other thing so Quinn is rightfully getting all this attention because he's kind of exploded.
Yeah, well, he's having the jump. Like, Cale Makar had this jump.
Yeah, exactly. And Quinn's having this jump.
We all fawned over Cale when he had the jump.
That does not make Quinn better than Cale. Quinn has now jumped into the category with Cale.
Yes.
That is where we're at here. Not he's jumped past him. Not he's jumped past Bobby Orr either. Like, what are we doing here? But there's some commonalities between Quinn and Cale.
Okay.
Elite skaters.
Yes.
Absolutely elite. I would say the two best defensemen in terms of skating ability in the league, far and away.
One uses it more than the other.
Yes.
And I was looking at NHL Edge.
Okay.
And yeah, because I thought, why not? We have this great resource. Why not? And Cale Makar is consistently in the 95th or above percentile in total miles traveled during a game.
Goodness.
In speed bursts of 20 miles per hour or more per game.
Wow.
And in just like in average speed as well. He's all that. Whereas Quinn, in all those metrics, he's around like the 75th, 76th percentile in pretty much all of that. They're both phenomenal skaters, but Cale clearly has more of Quinn clearly uses positional.
Quinn positionally is one of the best defensemen in the league, and I don't think that gets recognized enough.
But that is concrete proof that that's how he succeeds. He doesn't have to move as much. Like, Cale is more of the water bug, all over the ice. He wants to be there, whereas Quinn, he tries to. And I don't want to pin them against each other by saying one doesn't do this, but it does seem like Quinn thinks the game a bit more than Quinn's more.
Kale's more of a let's go
tactile learner,
Yeah, Kale's let's go, and Quinn's the methodical. Here's a good comparison.
Hit me.
Cale is come on Barbie, let's go party.
Yes.
And Quinn is Oppenheimer. I'm going to methodically think how I'm going to beat you, and then
I'm
going to beat you.
To be fair, Quinn's resting face does look like the guilt of creating a bomb that will change the world forever.
The best thing about it is that's just Quinn regularly.
I know.
And he is Quinn's the same person.
Quinn's resting face is the face of someone who fumbled Florence Pugh.
Ah, yes.
As not spoilers for Oppenheimer, that's what happened.
So Cale Makar is shooting 10.9%. Quinn is shooting 12.7%. Neither of those are sustainable.
Yes.
They're gonna both reset to probably around 7 or 8, which is where they belong.
Quinn's career is 5.
That's what I mean. So he's going to take that jump.
Yes.
I think his career shooting percentage will likely end up around 8.
Yes.
Well,
now that he has a shot.
Exactly. So I think obviously you can't be shooting amongst some of the top end forwards. That's just not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they'll both kind of see a dip from that perspective. Primary assists, they're neck and neck, 14-13, I believe at all strengths.
Yes, they are.
And so I don't think that's going to change.
14 for Cale, 13 for Quinn, just to be clear.
So, and I mean, Elias Pettersson is performing at an elite level this year.
Mm-hmm.
Cale's got Nathan McKinnon,
and Mikko Rantanen.
LOL.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we got to give credit where it's due. JT Miller is having a fantastic offensive season.
Let's make that offensive. But JT is right behind Quinn with 30 points. Quinn is number 1 in the league. JT is number 2. And PD is, I believe, right under him.
PD's got 29 because he didn't get a point last night.
Crazy stuff.
Good stuff. LOL, Elias Pettersson's next contract is a conversation for a different day.
And we will be having that conversation.
Oh, we will.
Let's talk about defensively, though, because that's obviously where the chasm, I would say,
right. So
separates them.
Exactly. So on ice, because this is impact.
Yes.
On ice offensively, at 5-on-5, Cale Makar, 4.29 goals for per 60 and 3.12 expected goals for per 60 for a goals for percentage, generally speaking, of 56%. Quinn Hughes on ice, 3.93 goals for per 60, so slightly below Cale. 2.64 expected goals per 60, also below Cale. This is where it's interesting, though, and where we're going to talk about defensively. His goals for percentage, or his expected goals for percentage, is 48%. which means he is not controlling the play. That is where the chasm is.
Yes.
Which is why any talk of Quinn pulling away from Cale in the Norris Trophy conversation when they are separated by 2 points and Cale's better defensively is ridiculous.
Here's what will happen. Let's say they find a way to, maybe not this level of production, but they find a way to both of these players to sustain the level of performance, if you will, over the course of the season. Quinn will 100% win the Norris over Cale.
Oh, yeah, because narrative.
Exactly. And
also his dad. I'll look directly down the camera and say his dad.
I don't know anything. So I'm not gonna. Rachel does. Dad. So there you go.
If you don't, the thing is there's always the story, right? So Erik Karlsson, he hit 100 points last year.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean it was
undeniable.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
but when you have somebody that has jumped into that category, which is interesting because most defensemen and defensive forwards, Selke-wise, Nico Hischier and Elias Pettersson have faced this already. They don't win until they've kind of been in that category for a year or two when they become known commodities. But when you burst onto the scene like this and you play in a Canadian market, naturally, this is going to get looked at because no offense to everyone in the Pro Hockey Writers Association, with the exception of a fine few.
I'm taking this
I'm also in it.
Yeah.
But none of you know how to evaluate defense. Absolutely none of you.
I don't. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, which is why you text me.
Yes.
Right? And so Quinn has this explosion. It's a huge story. But he hasn't pulled away. It just hasn't happened. Him and Cale have not even pulled away from best defenseman in the league because let's talk about defense.
Well, real quick before we do that, here are 2 things that I think will go against Quinn Hughes on the narrative sort of side of things.
Okay.
Number 1, so a lot of, like you said, the Pro Hockey Writers Association, a lot of us are in the Eastern time zone. We're in the Eastern time zone right now. So of course that'll be the case. Quinn kind of no-showed against the Leafs on the
he hockey. Very no-showed.
Yes. I was trying to be polite, but yes, he very no-showed against the Leafs. Hockey Night in Canada, that's the game after the Hall of Fame game. All the eyes are going to be on that. He no-showed on that. And then last night, these two, and the reason why we're doing this, is they went up against each other. And Cale did get the better of Quinn in the Cale versus Quinn matchup. So he's no-showed on the biggest stage, at least, and he's also no-showed against the guy who he's being most compared to. If there are 2 things that'll go against him, it'll be those 2 things.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
I was doing some ruminating since you mentioned that.
I love that word.
Yeah, I was ruminating when I was walking here, and I was thinking Quinn's being good, but man, those 2 things are not going to help him.
And also this whole thing about Eastern time zone and everything. So this is my beef, and I've actually had this conversation with Canucks fans, a few of them. You do not get to complain that when Montreal, Toronto are out on the West Coast that you have to play at 4 p.m. because it has to be at 7 out here. You don't get to complain that you have to play an earlier game and simultaneously complain that no one watches Quinn at 10:30 at night. You either want people to watch Quinn, which means you're playing earlier, or shut up.
Why is there any complaint about especially a weekend game starting earlier? That would be awesome. Can you imagine? You get the game ends at 7:30.
There should be no game starting at 10:30 p.m. Sorry, San Jose. The last game on the weekend should start at 9 p.m. Eastern. It just should. Imagine
you and I were living our lives in Toronto, and I go to the games, but imagine if you're able to just I even think about for my job, you watch a game, you cover a game. Usually that takes by the time I leave, that's for a game that started at 7, I leave at about 11:30.
Right. Whereas I literally go to the game, say hi to whatever clients I have, and then I piece the heck out.
Yeah. But for us,
and now I don't even have to sit in the press box anymore.
Yeah.
I get to sit in my seats.
But think about how awesome it'd be if the game starts at 4
Oh,
You know, like then it ends at 7. That means you're leaving at 8. You got the rest of your night because at the end of Leafs games, I'm dragging myself home. By the time I get back to my apartment, it's like midnight.
and think about it from a rest perspective for the players. If you're playing earlier, you're traveling earlier, means you're in bed earlier, means over the course of a season, like academically, and this has been studied, you sleep better. You're going to perform better.
You're getting more REM sleep.
I track my REM.
Yeah, I mean, good. That's the least shocking thing I've ever heard from you. But I'm saying like you get more REM sleep because that's the you know, like that's the sleep that comes before midnight, basically, like the sleep that
the deep sleep. But yeah, what I'm saying is any West Coast teams, California teams, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, all that. If you want to complain about early starts, you don't get to complain that nobody watches your players. You cannot complain about both because it is completely unreasonable to expect that people in Europe, because there are pro hockey writers in Europe, are staying up until 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah, man.
To watch your friggin' team. Not happening.
I know when
I gotta get up to do my European work, I gotta be up at 4:30.
Yeah, you're up
I'm
crazy.
not staying up.
No, of course
until 1:00 in the morning because the NHL wants to schedule a game at 10:30 at night.
You know what's
Pound
crazy?
salt.
The whole global series has really given me a good sort of appreciation for European NHL fans because you guys just don't sleep. You guys just never sleep.
Also, when the games are at 8 a.m. and you texted me, you're like, how do you wake up at this hour? Because I work every Saturday morning at that hour.
Well, hey, I am an early riser. Like I do typically get up at like 5:30 in the morning.
But you are not functioning work at that hour.
Because when I get up, I just like put my body into run mode and then go. That's it. Whereas
which is wild. I could never do that.
I don't have to like cut checks and make deals, and it's crazy. Let's talk defensively though.
This is where the chasm is.
This is where the chasm is, obviously. So Cale with a very positive turnover, I would say ratio or differential, if you will.
Yep, turnover differential.
11 turnovers to 17 takeaways. So he
that's wild.
Which is
for a guy who handles the puck as much as he does.
Yes,
that's incredible.
Absolutely nuts. Quinn, on the other hand, 18 turnovers and 12 takeaways. So that's a -6.
Yeah, so that's a chasm of 12.
Yes,
that's big. Yeah. Over 20. That's almost one a game. Actually, it's half a game.
Defense, like the metric is 0.8 opposed to Quinn, which is at just 0.
Yep.
And then
they both have similar quality of competition, by the way. So
yes.
It's.
Now, when it comes to their goals against per 60 and their goals,
and expected
goals against per 60, they're like relatively in the same, like they're close to each other. I mean, like Quinn is 2.3. Sorry, Cale.
This is 5-on-5
at 5-on-5. Yes, 2.32 and 2.53, whereas Quinn is 2.86, so worse expected, but better in actual goals against per 60.
Do you know why that might be, Mike?
And that might be because there's a massive chasm between save percentages between the two.
Are you telling me that Thatcher Demko, who is very much in the Vezina conversation, is performing better than Alexander Georgiev?
And listen, it's crazy. But Georgiev, listen, he was great last year.
Yes, but not
as much this year because
Thatcher Demko this year.
Because Cale Makar's on-ice save percentage is .905.
Which is average.
Which is like average, fine,
it's
whatever.
Sustainable.
If the Edmonton Oilers had that, it'd be a complete. Jay Woodcroft
would have a job.
Would be gainfully employed. It'd be great. Now for Quinn, bit of a different story, Rachel, because his on-ice save percentage is .933.
That is not remotely sustainable. So not even a little bit.
So every time that Quinn Hughes puts a pinky toe onto the ice, Thatcher Demko is playing at like a Vezina, like one of the best sustained save percentages ever.
Yeah, that's absurd.
And then on top of that
is actually like every time Quinn steps on the ice,
Thatcher Demko goes God mode.
He knows that Thatcher Demko is going to save 93% of the shots directed his way.
3%.
Like Thatcher Demko, man. Wow.
Like, think about it this way. Every time that Quinn Hughes steps on the ice, he can know that from wherever the shot is coming from,
93% of the time,
there's only a 7% chance that the opponent will score.
That's so ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Man, Ian Clark's a wizard.
That
Ian
is
Clark's a wizard.
absolutely crazy. And then another big thing, and this is always
and this is something that gets taken into account for the Norris voting.
Absolutely. Well, it's taken into account when it comes to forwards for the Selke. It's taken into account with the Norris too.
And the heart.
And the heart is that, do you kill penalties? Cale Makar does. He's got 56 total minutes of shorthanded ice time this year, whereas Quinn Hughes, 20.
So almost triple.
Yes.
Like, and to be fair to Quinn, that is not Quinn's decision.
No.
That's Adam Foote's. And they have other defense. Like, there's a reason Tyler Myers exists.
Like you have
Noah
Hronek if you want to. You
Mark
have
Friedman, who now has a concussion.
So who knows? Maybe
Hronek. Conserving. I'm all for conserving the energy of your players there. So I don't actually mind that decision from Foote and Tocchet. But when we're talking about defensively, like, I go back to like Nick Lidstrom.
Yes. Who did everything.
Literally everything.
Who would be
like someone we're like, oh, is Nick Lidstrom not elite? Are you dumb?
Nick Lidstrom is absolutely elite.
Might not have been elite offensively, but all around, the most elite defenseman of that generation.
And he also is a defenseman that has over 1,000 points.
Which is hilarious.
Which is insane. So yeah. Let's talk about them like versus the NHL, which will then sort of tie in other players we might need to add to this conversation.
Yeah, so right now, even though people might not like to hear it, like Quinn's offensive value exceeds Cale's, not by the same degree that Cale's defensive value exceeds Quinn. And they play the position of defense, which is sort of important to being, I don't know, a defenseman.
Look how mad you're making Rachel.
It's honestly, those two are the front runners for the Norris, Narrative Street, all of that. But it is not this runaway thing that people want to make it out to be just because Quinn has made the jump. That is not how this works. And I actually think that Tocchet might be harming his Norris case by not playing him shorthanded. And now, granted, they're not there to win trophies.
No.
There's one trophy they're there to win.
They're there to win games. And to their credit, they are winning a lot of games this year.
Exactly. So what he's doing is the correct approach. But that might mean it harms Quinn Hughes's Norris case. Now, if you put a gun to the Canucks fans' heads and said, Quinn Hughes wins the Norris or Vancouver makes the conference final, you pick, you can't have both. Every single one of them takes the conference final.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them.
Absolutely.
Right? You could tell if you put a gun to every single one of their heads and said, your team will make the cup final, but none of your players will be nominated for an award because of narratives or whatever. Mm-hmm. They would take the cup final.
Rachel,
in a heartbeat.
Here's a great example.
I know all of that fan base.
Here's a great example is that I was there when Cale Makar was both in the midst of the Stanley Cup final and he won the Norris. He won the Norris after game 2.
Right.
So before
he in Tampa, didn't even care.
He did not care. I was as far away from him as I am from you right now. And he had the Norris in his hands.
And he was like, I'm going to go win the other one.
He was like, I'm going to go win the cup. And after he won the cup, then he was able to celebrate. But obviously, there is only one.
So in the span of a week, he won the Norris, the Conn Smythe, and the cup. Is that good? That seems pretty good, right?
Pretty remarkable. Not going to lie.
All right, there are 2 defensemen that belong in the Norris conversation because, and they don't have the point totals, but defensively, it's kind of I'm shocked that one of them is in the conversation defensively, given last season. But nonetheless, you look at comparisons of value, and I looked at Dom's model, I looked at my model, and I looked at Evolving Wild. So 3. I also took a gander at Micah's, but he doesn't do as much of this. But I always look at it for a barometer because I think it's really important. All of them have Morgan Riley and Erik Karlsson in the conversation. And when all of them have it, then I know it's not off. If it's just one, then okay, yeah, let's take that with a grain of salt. Every single one has those 4 players. So it's you can't ignore it. You simply cannot ignore it. So you look at it with D with 400 minutes. So we played roughly 20 games. 400 minutes means you're playing 20 minutes a game. You're not winning a Norris if you don't play arguably like 24 minutes, but I gave 20.
Yes.
20 minutes a game.
It's a good barometer there. Yeah.
Who leads defensemen in player value?
That would be Morgan Rielly.
And why?
Because his even strength defense is better than both.
By like a fair margin too, right? So you look at it, he leads in games or goals above replacement, and in DOMs in I'm not sure if he's leading in DOMs, but he's up there in game score value added because his even strength defense has taken a major step this year and has far exceeded both Quinn's and Cale's. So in terms of being a defenseman, Morgan Rielly is, and somehow Erik Karlsson is also in this discussion.
Well, you have Morgan Rielly number 1, then you have Hughes, Makar, and Karlsson in descending order.
For value, not even strength defense.
Yes,
for overall value.
For goals above replacement.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
So Morgan Rielly, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Erik Karlsson. That is, first of all, as like, I've watched every single Leafs game. Yes, Morgan Rielly has been dominant every single night.
Yes.
But not to the eye-popping extent that Quinn and Cale have been. But that kind of goes to show that maybe as a defenseman, if you aren't being noticed defensively, it's probably a pretty good thing.
Well, that is the main thing with Morgan, where last season, especially during the regular season, he was noticeable defensively for all the wrong reasons. This year, not a peep of complaint against him. There's a reason why the guys who get the most guff in Toronto when it comes to defensemen, they're the ones who make the most visible mistakes. It was the Justin Hall,
Jake Gardiner, Aki Berg.
Even towards the end of his time, Brian McCabe,
when he scored in his own net.
On his own net. Yeah, exactly. And this was a phenomenal hockey player, but...
And then the other thing we need to consider, so we just goals above replacement, which is evolving hockey, right? My model actually has it like a lot closer. So evolving hockey's has Rielly, Hughes, then like a mini gap, then Makar, then Karlsson a little bit further back. My model has Rielly, Hughes, Makar within like 0.1 of each other. And then Karlsson, I believe, is like 0.4 below them. So it's and then everyone else is just like not even close. Right. And I actually have Makar and Hughes flipped because of the defense, because my model values the defensive play and the shorthanded play. And so that is where probably Rielly comes out on top. But if you look at it, the other thing we need to consider is that Filip Hronek is 6th in evolving wilds. So that pairing is far and away the best pairing in the league. And it also means that part of Quinn's success and part of Hronek's success are because of each other. And everyone wants to yell and scream about Devon Toews. Well, he ranks 24th. So it's not even like...
Which is still good.
We're talking about 2nd place and 6th place versus 3rd place and 24th place and 1st place and not even on the goddamn list place. Right? So Morgan Rielly relative to teammates is producing the best because he's playing with... I don't even know what the hell is going on there. But Hughes and Hronek have been the best pair in the league. And it needs to be said that part of Hughes' success and part of Hronek's success are because of each other and how they're able to play together. But even strength defense, Rielly, then Karlsson, then Makar, then Hughes. If you would have told me that Erik Karlsson would have had a better defensive impact than Morgan Rielly or than Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, I would have raised an eyebrow. If you would have told me that Erik Karlsson would have one of the top even strength defense impacts so far this year, I would have been like, what? But Dom, me, the Twins at Evolving Hockey, Micah, we're all like, all of us are in agreement here. So it's like, we can't all be missing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then offensively, Hughes, then Karlsson, then Makar, and then Rielly, because Rielly is not, he's being a defenseman. Which, like, hey, the Leaf fans will take that, right? So, yeah, it's kind of one of those, it's really, really close. And the only reason Makar and Hughes have pulled away is because of the offensive side of things. But if we're actually talking about bringing the most value, Karlsson and Riley need to be in that conversation. And no one's talking about Morgan Riley. So I absolutely don't want to hear about Toronto bias and all this other nonsense, because if there actually was Toronto bias, there would be
a ticker tape parade right now down the street.
Trumpet horns saying, well, Morgan Riley's value is actually exceeding that of Hughes and Makar. So I think there's some play to be had. There's definitely a lot more debate to be had. It's obviously going to come down to between Makar and Hughes, barring injury, and I really hope neither one of them get hurt. I want them both playing all the games
season long,
please.
Great, and
let the best season. I mean, let's face it, the best season is probably not even going to win, but let's at least let them duke it out and go from there, because what we're seeing right now is similar to last year with Karlsson and McDavid. These are historic seasons,
absolutely,
just off the hop.
So let's appreciate greatness, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody needs to yell and scream about who's better, who's this, who's that. Like that, leave that for the end of the season. But what we're absolutely not going to do is say that anyone is better than Bobby Orr.
Yes.
Because you're a dummy. You straight up are.
Now, before we leave, Rachel, there was some breaking news during the podcast.
There was. Do I want to know this?
It's well, I don't know. Is that Taylor Hall is out for the season with a knee injury?
Is that why my phone was buzzing?
I don't know.
Yes, that's why my phone was buzzing.
Taylor Hall is expected to miss the rest of the 2023-24 campaign with a knee injury, which is a massive bummer. And I didn't want to interrupt our spirited conversation with that.
Man, that ruined my day.
Well, that on that note, everybody, I'm glad I can always be such a bright presence in Rachel's life. I'm glad that I can do that. No, but yeah, I think we should appreciate greatness and also send our thoughts out to Taylor Hall because that sucks. That sucks. So on that note, we will be back on Monday.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Eat lots of turkey. Watch lots of football.
Yep.
And Mike's Meals for One first episode drops this weekend.
Yeah. We're recording it right after this podcast, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Take care.